This video is brought to you by Skillshare, but more on that in a moment. Let's start this video with a clear declaration. There has been no new spoilers for the Lord of the Rings set. This has more come to mind with me recently playing quite a bit of Modern, so I'm going to talk about more of that in a moment. But no new information has been revealed. In today's video, I want to talk speculatively about the future that is coming early next year. A world where Space Marines can fight Balrogs and Aragorn can floss with John Wick from Fortnite. All within the confines of your favourite trading card game. Magic is ramping up its involvement with external IPs, culminating with, in the new year, Lord of the Rings becoming modern legal immediately as it comes in, something we haven't seen with an external IP property beyond D&D or reskins with Godzilla. But are you along for the ride as eternal formats become the playground for IPs clashing with other IPs? And by IPs I mean intellectual property. More importantly, will Gandalf take a huge steaming diarrhea dump on Modern? Or will Legacy become the format where Frodo replaces the now banned Ragavan as the de facto best one-drop ever printed? Frodo would be a white one-drop though, right? Not a red one. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Before we get into it though, here's a message from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. You know them, they're everywhere at this point, and that's because they're one of the most respected online learning platforms out there, looking to help you with whatever your goal is. Are you looking for personal growth and discovery? Or perhaps you need to develop some new skills for your budding career or your side hustle? Or maybe it's just self-care and relaxation. Skillshare has helped me to develop beyond a rudimentary building of thumbnails inside my editing software to instead understanding and utilizing Adobe to improve the look of my channel and increase the engagement within my videos. I found Daniel Scott's Advanced Adobe Photoshop course to be so helpful in using these tools just to improve the quality of the content I put out on this channel. It also means that I can rustle up little Photoshops like this. That's Sister DeVito of the Sororitas. These first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below will get a 1 month free trial of Skillshare so they can give it a go themselves. That's 1 month free so you can give it a go and see what we're talking about. There is a link in the description below, and by using it, you help support the show and the content that I make. A big shout out to Skillshare for not only sponsoring the channel, but providing me with new tools and new abilities that have improved the content that I make. Comment down below, there's going to be a pinned comment. Reply to that, tell me what courses you're thinking of taking, what sort of things you want to improve upon using something like Skillshare. And with that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Whilst we don't have explicit card reveals for Lord of the Rings just yet, we do have this art, and we know it's going to be modern legal thanks to the article that revealed this art. That's right, we were told that Samwise will be tutoring for Frodo. I assume they might have partners with, who knows. And Legolas will be tossing off a dwarf or something. It's been a while since I've seen the movies, and I'm not going to read a book because I'm not a fucking nerd. But this won't just be happening alongside Delver of Secrets and Days and Legacy, or the Shops decks in Vintage, like it does with all other releases. All other external IP universes beyond, this is like Walking Dead, Street Fighter, Stranger Things, they've all been legal in Legacy from the moment they came out, and that we've seen minor play by Rick, Steadfast Leader, or Negan. But much like the Horizon sets and all the stuff they brought with them, the Lord of the Rings will be legal in Modern. This is not new information. This video is more spawned from conversations I've had in games I've played recently. I've been playing quite a bit of Modern on the channel, and I've been frustrated with games being dominated by Ragavans, Murktides, Urza Sagas, and things cascading into other things, namely Shardless Agents. Modern Horizons transformed the format, and Modern Horizons 2 transformed the format even further. Some of you might be thinking it's rather extreme to ask the question, will Gandalf come in and spunk his cum all up the walls? Or to translate it out of my native tongue, will Gandalf decimate or warp the format? But like I said, Modern might be a non-rotating format, but the reality of the situation is that it tends to artificially rotate. Whether that be originally with bans of things that made no sense to be banned, or the introduction and printing of cards directly into the format that are just better than everything else. Both Modern Horizons formats have served to absolutely transform Modern and most other formats too, with just the sheer power level of the shit they've introduced. Tentpole archetypes propping up from some cards, other cards being so fucking good they go into 2 or 3 archetypes that dominate the format, or cards that create play patterns that are just absolutely the focus of every match you play with the deck. There is a reason that Brian Kibler of all people refers to Modern now as Modern Horizons Block Constructed, because to be honest, he is not far wrong. I've spoken at great lengths before about how I actually end up missing some broken and busted cards that made it ridiculous metagames. One Bizarro tournament thanks to the Eldrazi, for example, or good content thanks to Simian Spirit Guide. I've also recently talked about how older formats like Modern, and to an even further extent Legacy, should be where design mistakes go to die in some capacity. And that's a dramatic statement. They go to graze, they go out to pasture. We put them in those formats to be played with. Umezawa's Jittes and Tabernacles, and in Vintage, Lotuses and Workshops. There's got to be somewhere to play with these relics of the past that were mistakes. We can't have them all banned in every format. The problem comes when it's not the occasional mistake from each set and the formats slowly change over time and metagames adjust as new sets introduce new things. Arc-like Phoenix, for example, is a very good example of... That was some terrible... Anyway, Arc-like Phoenix is a great example of a card that brought about a new archetype and transitioned formats forward into a different space, and then further and further, and just over time, Modern and Legacy have evolved. The problem comes is when these sets introduce so much shit at once that the format changes dramatically overnight. And the thing is, if this increased accessibility, that would be a very good thing. If it was that people couldn't afford Tarmogoyfs and Jaces and Lilianas and shit, and they introduced new cards that gave people an in, that would be great. But the problem is, they absolutely invalidate those older decks for the most part. Maybe Jund arguably is one of the decks that survives as a fringe rogue deck now. But also, the cards are often more I'm pausing not for dramatic effect there, but they're more expensive for fuck's sake. Credit where credit is due, lands like Shocks and Fetches are actually down from their all-time highs at much more reasonable prices, even if it's still a bit expensive in my opinion. But a Tarn right now is around $33 for the oldest Zendikar printing, down from 70 this time last year. I want to do a video where I talk about that progress, that positive progress. I mean, I was the one championing for Fetchland reprints for years. Reprint them in a meaningful way, Wizards, you cowards. And they reprinted them not enough, in my opinion. I would have preferred a non-premium set and would see Fetchlands like sub $20 for a longer period of time, but they still put some of the work in, so we have to give credit where credit is due. However, it's hard to be positive when the new staples cost so much fucking money. If we look at just 4 Ragavans and 4 Murktides, just those 8 cards is $400, which you might react with and say, well, that's just 2 staples, man. But it's also kind of the best thing you can do in the format, besides perhaps a Yorion pile, which again brings problems of A, it's 80 cards, and B, you're playing a plethora of expensive super staples from Horizons, like the Elementals and such. I've recently discovered another YouTuber who makes primarily mill videos for Modern called That Mill Guy, who did a video about the problems with Modern recently. Their closing point, which is something that I'd missed quite a bit, that these metagame percentage shares and their win rates even might actually be dramatically higher if more people could afford these decks. These are money pile, nonsense, super expensive Modern decks and in Legacy, but let's just fucking brush that aside. I'm talking about Modern specifically. They're expensive Modern decks, and some of them you can't even rent through online rental services for Modo because they go beyond the cap. Some people simply cannot play these decks. That's probably why Burn actually shows up like it does at the moment in the metagame, because it's a cheap deck you can pick up online or rent for relatively cheap. Think about that for a moment. The metagame shares we're seeing might actually be skewed by the fact that these cards are so fucking expensive that not enough people are actually playing the decks. Anyway, what does that have to do with Gandalf the Grey and the Fellowship of the Ring? Well, it's coming to Modern, right? So this is the next shake-up? Is this the next rotation? Is Gandalf gonna wreck some shit? Let me draw from this particular quote in the announcement. We also knew that the immense size, the iconic nature of the stories, and the devotion fans have to Lord of the Rings meant that we couldn't do the set justice without creating a full product line to give as many players the opportunity to play with the classic characters as possible. Like all Universes Beyond products, the set will not be legal in standard, but Modern and historic legality provides the greatest opportunity for the most people to experience this beloved world while still holding standard as its own space. While the set isn't focused on Modern like a Modern Horizons set might be, we want to give as many players the opportunity to play with these cards and enjoy them. So we have to be fair here. They are explicitly saying it's not going to be Modern Horizons 3 dressed up to look like Ian McKellen. But if it isn't Modern Horizons 3 and the power level is significantly lower, does that not mean that the cards are likely to make no, or at least minimal impact to the format. Doesn't that mean that your primary goal of putting it into Modern, which is a weird choice, don't forget, I've laid out, they've never done this before, but isn't your goal to let more people play with the cards? If they are objectively worse than anything that Horizons put into the format or anything that exists thus far, or at least worse than the Horizons cards, which are better than most things that existed thus far, isn't that kind of a self-defeating goal for the set? They say that they want Lord of the Rings to be played by as many people as possible, but if the cards are literally as weak as cat piss, then they won't make a decent dent, barring the odd one. The problem with Horizons is that it creates a quite high wall, a steep curve, a big old fucking hurdle of power creep, where anything after Horizons, and we've seen this with things like AFR getting accused of, Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, being accused of being quite a weak set, in spite of putting like 8 cards or so into like Modern and things that get played. Those sets now pale in comparison because they just can't get over the straight to, my hands off the fucking screen, they're straight to Modern power level. They just get stuck on the ramparts and they rot like an Uruk-hai against the walls of Helm's Deep. Oh, I know my Lord of the Rings, you bitches. I think it was Helm's Deep. So this brings us back to the original question. How much shit is Gandalf actually going to wreck? There will be some iconic cards. Mordor, the Ring, the Rings of Power, Legolas's wig. Something is going to be pushed and playable, or outright format defining. It will probably be an efficient red-blue threat, and for the commander staples, something big and green. I don't know, maybe it's going to be Treebeard. So Lord of the Rings as a set exists in this weird, tense design space, from a game design perspective and from a where is the product aimed to be and who is meant to buy this perspective, besides obviously Lord of the Rings fans. It is living in the shadow, the fallout, the post-modern Horizons world where it may well just absolutely pale in comparison, and it will be compared. We saw it with a temporal closeness of Double Masters to Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur's Gate, where the latter in that conversation, which came first, the Baldur's Gate set, was considered just shite by all metrics because Double Masters absolutely fucking dwarfed it, as did Commander Legends, a thing in its namesake. I do think Lord of the Rings is going to be, as we move towards it, compared to Modern Horizons quite a bit, because it is aimed in the same way. It is looking to do the same thing, if not for different reasons. And that's the thing, right? If the cards pale in comparison, what's the fucking point? That's the tension. Are they powerful enough to re-warp the format? We don't really want that. But if they're not powerful enough to do that, are they going to see any play? If not, why are they going into Modern? The real reason that Lord of the Rings is being printed and being made Modern legal immediately is so they can sell packs. We all know this. For the longest time, they've thought that older formats were not monetizable, or they claimed as much, and Masters sets proved them wrong, much to the glee of shareholders. But then they needed to be careful not to return to that well too often, lest you lose all of the equity you built up over the years. Reprint equity, cards that you can go back and reprint to drive hype. So what do? You design and you print more equity, more staples, more things you can go back and reprint later to drive hype. Force of Negation, for example, being a great one, because people want that fucking card for every format it's legal in, and now they can reprint it. It's their new Lily. They've managed to print cards that Eternal format players want too. This will sell packs, this makes the stakeholders happy, this makes the set successful, it helps all their key performance indicators, but is Modern better off for it? Ultimately, I don't really mind the intellectual property crossover stuff, I don't really care. In some ways, I've accepted it and now I'm embracing it. Space Marines and Legacy, the fucking Fellowship and Modern, whatever. In some ways, I'm more excited about seeing Gandalf fight Captain Picard on my tabletop while playing Magic than I am to see Modern rotate artificially again. The problem being, though, those two futures, Picard versus Gandalf and Horizons rotating the fucking format again, or Horizons in disguise, they aren't exclusive. Those two things can happen at once, and I believe that's probably where we're going to go with Magic moving forward and with the Eternal formats moving forward. And ultimately, although that sounds good that you're putting two things into one, it sounds like you're getting a crossover where really not everyone or very few people are actually happy or they get what they want. The final note I want to touch upon before I hand off to you to tell me in the comment section about how you feel is that Well, the staples thing is a problem. If Gandalf is a staple and Frodo is a staple, and then they can't reprint them because they don't have a license to the Gandalf or Frodo name, these things become even more difficult to get back into circulation than Ragavan or Murktide. Of course, we don't know the price of the Lord of the Rings packs. I'm assuming they won't be premium, but as it's going straight to modern, mark my words, it probably will be. And they can do treatments of these cards. People keep saying this about the Warhammer decks. What I mean by treatments is that with Stranger Things and with Walking Dead, they've done in the list of set and collector boosters where you can get list cards, you can sometimes open a Magic the Gathering-ized version of a Walking Dead or well, actually we didn't do Walking Dead at all for some reason, but jumping forward, the Stranger Things cards, you can get Magic the Gathering versions with a different name. It's weird though, because they don't actually make reference that they are a Magic the Gathering version of that card, so some new players might put both in the decks for Commander, but that's neither here nor there. So they can do that for 5 secret layer cards. Put them into those packs, they end up coming out and not being too expensive because the drop rate of them has been pushed up. I don't think we're going to see that for Lord of the Rings or Warhammer because there's going to be so many cards. Or should I say not see it? We're not going to see it for all of the cards. Let's say each of those sets introduces 15 powerful staples, and then all 15 of them put onto the list, decreasing the likelihood of getting anyone in particular, and then pushing the price up. It's a weird place to be, and I'm wondering over the next year or two if we'll see how they handle this reprint problem. Or the other option is they go out of their way to make these cards not too powerful, not become format staples, and then we're in this situation again where people aren't playing with the fucking things, and then they'll be considered a failure. It is going to be a delicate tightrope to walk, a balancing act that I want to be confident they'll get right, but I'm not after Modern Horizons 2. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Do you think we're worrying about nothing? Will Gandalf shit in my mouth in a game of Modern? All that and more down below. And don't forget to fucking subscribe. I'm so close to 100k. Oh, I can taste it. Ta-ta for now.